Hey, it's time to calibrate. I'm Mark, and this is episode 48. Today, Bob and my dear friend James are joining me. James is here as a special guest slash co-host duty because Brent couldn't make it. How you guys doing today?
I'm doing great.
Fridays are always good days, usually.
Absolutely, especially when it's closer to the end of the day.
Yeah.
Since this is a watch podcast, we're all held by the same rules as everyone else. What's on your wrist, gentlemen? Let's start with you, James, since you're the guest of honor.
Oh, Mark, this one's for you. This is a Zenith flyback rainbow from 1997 that I know you love as much as I do, and that has taken me decades to finally track down. Very, very happy to finally gotten this one. This one came out of Japan. I got it full kit, freshly serviced from Zenith. It's got all the links. It's got all the paperwork. It's just a perfect example of that watch that I've just, I've wanted it for so long. When it was new, it was too expensive, and then they were popular on the forums, but still too expensive. And as they slowly became more affordable, they became harder and harder to find, at least nice examples of them. And just took me this long to kind of find the right example at a reasonable price that was safely accessible. So there you go.
Did you just get that one?
Just got that. Yeah, just got this one, and I think it's the last addition to the latest addition to my collection. One of, anyways.
Sweet.
But yeah,
Man, that thing, back in the 90s, they used to, if you wrote into Zenith, they would write back and they would ask for your mailing address, and they'd send you a VHS tape of a tour of their factory with some cheesy music behind it. And
Oh, really?
Yeah, I still have that tape somewhere, but I don't have a VHS player anymore. But yeah, and I love that watch. I have a magazine. I don't know where it is. There it is. Hold on a second.
while he's looking for that, if anyone's interested, it's reference number 02.0480.405. There it is.
This magazine's from 1997.
Wow.
Yeah, it's in French. It's the Montre magazine issue nouveauté. So new releases 1997. That's the watch. That's the one you got.
Very cool.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that one and the Ulysse Nardin and Marine Chronometer. Those are two watches that I used to covet back in the day. And like you said, it was too expensive. You know, I'm looking back, it wasn't expensive.
No.
It's just that salaries are funds, relative 20, 30 years ago, not exactly the same as they are now.
Yeah.
And they are hard to find. And the ones you do find are either bezel's all scratched up or needs a bad service, or the bracelet looks like dog poop and is fully stretched or whatever. He got himself a really nice example. And I'm going to hang out with him this evening to steal it from, hang out with him and see it in person this evening. So Bob, what do you got on wrist?
Nice. All right. So we are pretty fresh back from the Vancouver Timepiece show. And I was introduced to a brand there, and it was kind of one of the crowd favorites, 22 Studio. I stole a couple of watches from them at the show to borrow for a little bit. They're actually going to be part of our Alon Solutions team and making the rounds on our, as Mark calls them, the traveling watch show. But they do, I don't know if you guys did you see their watches there, Mark?
Yeah, very quickly. There's always people in front of
There's a second one I can show you a little bit better, but they do like a 3-dimensional concrete dials. And check out how the hands are. They're kind of like L-shaped.
Yeah, look at that.
Because the dial is so deep.
It's really nice.
They're sort of bent at a 90 at the hand stack, and just really neat watches. They got a bunch of cool stuff. I'm going to bring them to Montreal for you guys to check out. But that's what I'm wearing today. I have a bronze version of it, and then the stainless steel here on the desk too.
Very cool.
What about you, Mark?
So I've been wearing most of the day my bronze Eterna because I got a new strap for it while I was in Vancouver at the show. I stopped by Roldorf's and I picked up one of his straps. It's called the Boundary. It's got a nice thick strap while I wait for Aaron to make something for me. But I took it off and decided to wear my G-Shock Square Metal, which used to belong to James. And I stole from, we traded for it last time.
We traded. It's fair.
We saw each other. I'm very pleased with this. I wear it all the time. It's such a tough, cool watch. And yeah, love it. Super accurate. I no longer have to go to time.gov to set my watches. I got something on my desk that's equally accurate. So that's pretty cool.
I'm glad it's getting some wrist time.
Yeah, thanks. I'm really happy with it. Thank you. Thanks again. So I've known James for about 2 years now. And in that time, we've become good friends. We met the first time at a Red Bar event in Montreal. That was just ahead of the inaugural Toronto Timepiece show 2 years ago. We then ran into each other at the Toronto show and shortly after started getting together every couple of weeks for drinks and watches. We added a few more people to our group of regulars and have since formed the Timepiece Social Club. James will talk about it a little more further on in the show. And we have our first gathering on May 28th. This is the Thursday prior to the inaugural Montreal Timepiece show. And you can get free tickets for that event by visiting timepieceshow.com. Now, James is not just a watch collector, he is also a dad of an awesome micro dude named Leroy, who is a huge Muppet fan, and husband to wonderful supermom, Rachel, whom I got to meet a couple months ago. He also collects pens, knives, flashlights, and he even built atomic clocks. Yes, I'll ask him about those. Don't worry about it. It's on my list of questions. And if you didn't know, he's kind of famous. He was on Rico's Watches podcast not once, but twice. He is an IT specialist by trade and is just recognized for his invaluable contributions to research and families in the fight against CF, a special benefit event held by Cystic Fibrosis Canada. He joined this volunteer role several years ago, pouring in countless hours of spare time because he wanted to do something that could make a difference. I'm so proud of my friend. I'm equally happy to have him on the show. So, James, let's get this started. If I recall, you got into watches because your father, the cardiac surgeon, was into watches, and you wound up getting an original Tag Your Formula One watch. Am I remembering this correctly?
Yeah. Well, Dad's a cardiologist, so not a surgeon, but regular country cardiologist, he'd call himself. Um, yeah, so Dad always wore this, Rolex Submariner 5513. And when I was a kid, that to me was the reference point for a cool watch. What your dad had is what you wanted, kind of thing. And I can remember being in Fort Lauderdale. I think it was called the Galleria or Sunrise. Anyways, big shopping mall in Fort Lauderdale, and there was a store called Birdine's. We were walking through there, and they had Tag, and they were discontinuing the line, so they were, I don't know, 60% off, some ridiculous discount. And there was this little Tag F1 that was there. It was, more boy sized than man sized, so it kind of fit my wrist well. And if I remember, it was like $150. Um, uh, like dirt cheap. And the funny thing is, so it was a little dive watch. It didn't look exactly like a Submariner, but it had the turning bezel, black bezel. It had some certain elements, and if I'm not mistaken, it even had the Mercedes hands.
Yeah.
And for $150 to kind of get a little bit of that feeling was to me just it was fantastic. And the very or even more interesting is my father's 5513 he got with his dad. No, I'm mixing it up. Not with his dad, but doesn't matter. He bought his 5513 for $150.
Wow.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, fast forward and not quite the same deal, a Tag for 150 versus a Rolex for 150, but yeah, that was kind of, you could argue it started before that with some simpler watches, but that was the first kind of respectable timepiece that I owned. Before that was lots of cheap and cheerful stuff that would glow in the dark, and you just kind of sit there at night, lights off, before you fell asleep, just kind of staring at the time and charging it up before you go to bed. But yeah, the Tag was kind of the first one. Interesting that was a watch that I had sold to purchase a Seamaster, kind of a 1960s Seamaster, and kind of regretted it ever since. So back then when I sold it, everything had to be financially calculated. I couldn't really have one unless I sold one, stuff like that. And now that I'm, further along in life, I went back and I actually tracked down the same model and was again from Japan and was able to buy kind of this exact same model that I had back then, just to have it again. I rarely wear it. I wore it to a Tag event here in Montreal, I think with you,
Yep.
Mark.
Yeah, that's where I heard the story the first time.
Yeah, there you go. But yeah, it's just nice to have just sitting there. I wish it was the original one, but close enough.
Yeah.
Same model, like same dial, same reference. But
Funny thing is that that Rolex your father had when he bought it, new, he didn't get it at a huge discount. That's just how much they were
yeah,
at the store. My wife's uncle found one under the seat of a movie theater. I think I told this story before. He was when he came to Canada, that was his job. He was cleaning cinemas. And you guys remember the Rialto Cinema in Montreal on Park Avenue? He was cleaning that cinema and he found a shoebox with two Rolex boxes underneath, and they had invoices in them, or one, or like a partial invoice. And it was a Rolex Sea Dweller double red,
Wow.
which he kept. And the little invoice in there was $167,
wow,
1970 something. Yeah.
amazing.
So what was the next watch, James? Was it that Explorer 2 that you got for college, or?
No, it would have been that 5513.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it would. What happened was, Dad had always coveted a Rolex President, the date, but it was an expensive watch. And when he from whatever point he started to covet it, he opened a bank account to save for it, and he would put money into it. But Dad's the kind of guy who, if we needed a new car, or the roof needed repairs or something like that, it was the watch fund that was used first, because it was play money, it wasn't serious money. So, it being the responsible parent he was, he took money from that account to pay for whatever life's expenses were. So it never managed to build up. And interestingly, when he met my mother did the same thing. She opened an account secretly. Now, she controlled the household finances, so it was easy for her to do. And she started saving kind of alongside him, until she noticed that, or until she got to the point where she had saved the approximate missing amount from what his account didn't have, to buy this watch. And so I remember we went to the bank, and she had saved $8,000, and we went to the bank, and she had ordered 8 $1,000 bills, which you can't just get, you have to order them. So they come in, we got 8 $1,000 bills, stuffed them in an envelope, and that was his Christmas present, with this directive that he wasn't allowed to save this money. He had to use it to get this watch that he'd been after his whole life. So I can remember that, it was Christmas time, waited a little bit of time, and then we went shopping around town to all the different dealers that had Rolex, and he was looking for kind of the best price, who was willing to give the best price, because back then you could negotiate the price on a especially an all gold Rolex. It was fairly easy to get steep discounts. And we went to Burke's, we went to Kaufman's, we did a few places, and he ended up finding one place that gave him a great deal, like substantially good deal. Got down to about $12,000, and he bought it. And when he bought it, I mean, he was this. My dad rarely gets visibly excited, but you could tell he was over the moon. But then suddenly, this 5513 that he's had since he was 16 years old is like the old watch. Now, keep in mind, this isn't a time when Rolex was not what it is today. It was always a respected watch, but it wasn't coveted. It wasn't hyped like it is today. So to him, he had the new watch, the old watch. I said, here, wear my old watch. Now, it was never officially given. It was, kind of on permanent loan. And I wore that thing all throughout high school, and my first jobs working on cars. I mean, that thing just got the hell beaten out of it, because it was a real tool watch, and I just used it and used it and used it. So that was really the second, I guess, serious watch, and it only was put aside when I got my Explorer 16570, the Explorer 2 16570, and that came along because um, uh, the idea was that my dad had gotten a watch when he graduated, and I always asked my dad, when do I get mine? This is as like a kid, like a 7-year-old kid, like, oh, you got a watch, when do I get my watch? And so he was, when you get accepted to college. So, as time went on, I wasn't a great student, but I did manage to graduate and get accepted to college, and hid that acceptance letter until, because I knew we were going back to again Fort Lauderdale, And in that same shopping mall, there's a Mayer's Jewelers who carried Rolex. So we used to always, when my mom was shopping, we'd always go into there and look at the watches. And Dad would always say the same thing. I'd always ask, I want to see. Can I see that one? Can I see that one? Can I see that? Dad would always say, like, don't bother the man unless you're ready to buy. Don't bother the man until you're ready. So looking at these watches, and we're in there with Dad, and I see this Explorer, and I said, can I see that watch? And Dad said, like right on cue, right? Don't bother the man unless you're willing to buy. To which I presented the acceptance letter, handed it to him. He read the letter, took a minute, and then looked at the sales guy and said, "Show the man his watch." And yeah, and so he pulled this one out, and I immediately started to question whether that was the right one. And so I had to try on, I think, every Rolex in the display case, which was fun. In those days, every model was there. You could try on every model, see how they what they were like, and ended up walking out with that one. And Mom was really mad, really, really mad. I mean, they were a lot more expensive than $150 then, still nothing like they are today. But it was not something that had been kind of built into the vacation budget that year. So Mom was mad, but Dad was happy. Dad was proud. I was over the moon, and yeah.
Who has the sub nowadays? Is it back with Dad or?
No, well, it went back to Dad. It went
Yeah.
back to Dad when I had that one, and then at one point, he knew that I was well, kind of, I guess, a more serious watch collector than he was, and he still didn't care for that watch. He still preferred the President. He didn't like the acrylic crystal, how easy it was to scratch. He didn't like the jangly bracelet.
Yeah,
Those older subs, they feel a lot cheaper than a modern one.
for sure.
So he just wasn't wearing it. He loved at the time, I guess around that was it the Bond film Goldeneye. I bought the Bond Seamaster, and he really liked that one, and I was getting a little tired of it, so I just said, "Hey, do you want to trade?" And to him, it wasn't about he'll tell you, all the watches will be mine one day, and I'll tell you all the watches will be my son's one day. So he didn't really care about dollar value. He just saw a watch that he would wear, uh, trading for a watch that he won't wear. So we traded. So he has my Seamaster, and I have Seamaster Bond, and I still have that 5513.
And James owes me a story about that 5513 and his dad's 1969 Speedmaster that he is supposed to put together. And then he and I are going to collaborate, and we're going to get our friend James Cornish to take some pictures. I'll have to go on the calibrated wrist, but James is kind of lollygagging and not getting it done.
I guess I shouldn't tell those stories now. Then.
Well, no, you can put in some dates in there, and we can polish that up and make it nice and tight with a bow.
Well, the problem is, you said it at the beginning there. I'm in IT, which means I write in bullet form. You should see the love letters to my wife. Number one, I love you. Number two, you're pretty. It's just writing is
those are the same bullet points you can do with her 5513. I'm pretty sure.
There you go. Writing is my absolute weakest link. I mean, I can't spell for the life of me. This is funny. My wife is a professional editor. She's one of these strange human beings that can produce a 8,000-page document without a single typo, written by multiple authors, and make them all sound like it was one person that wrote this thing from start to finish. And of course, she marries me, who sometimes forgets how to spell the most basic words, and asking her all day, "Honey, how do I spell this? How do I spell?" The only thing I don't mess up is how to spell watch names. Somehow watch brands come to me easily.
Yeah, well, we'll do the bullet point format like we said, and I'll write up the story, and we'll do something special for that. Those watches need to be photographed by James, and his 5513 is absolutely gorgeous. The Speedmaster is fantastic. This will make a really good article.
Sounds good.
So, James, do you remember the moment that you realized collecting had become more than just a casual interest?
It was. I guess I really, Dad's going to feature prominently in this. I really idolized him, and so like anything that he did, I wanted to do. If he liked watches, I liked watches. If he liked pens, fountain pens, I liked fountain pens, and I would generally put a little spin on it. And in my family, we all, a lot of all the men in my family are doctors, and I knew I didn't want to be Well, at some point I figured out I didn't want to be a doctor. I thought I wanted to be in the family business for the beginning, but then at some point I kind of changed my mind. And there was this persistent battle in my head to kind of validate my alternative approach to my career. You know, there's there's um there's elements to being a doctor that bring you immediate kind of recognition and respect that don't necessarily translate to computer nerd. And so I was always kind of trying to find a way to hmm, validate that with successes elsewhere. So if my dad liked watches, I liked watches, but if he collected 5 watches, I was going to collect 50. And so that was always, I mean, that goes back to my Burdine's purchase of that tag. That was just the start. But there was a turning point where it's actually around the time of that Zenith when I couldn't afford them that I got into Russian watches because you could get these reasonably interesting pieces for $300 at the high end, $20 at the low end. And that coincided with a trip we made to St. Petersburg, where I literally bought Vostoks out of a guy wearing a trench coat that kind of opened up the trench coat and had this like line of watches. It was like a joke, like a caricature of a New York street seller of watches, that kind of image. He literally did that. He opened up his coat and he had a bunch of Vostoks and uh, bought my first one there. So I was fascinated with the Russian watches, and there was a lot of history. There was a lot of technicality in there. There's a lot you could kind of dive into, and the internet was fully formed at that point. So spent a lot of time on the forums digging through stuff. And collecting information. So that point there was probably the point when I got really serious about it. Was trying to find kind of the which 50 no which 3133 do I want, which Soviet chronograph was the most interesting, and in those days you could buy Russian or you could buy Soviet. Soviet was the most interesting stuff, but considerably more expensive. And after that kind of formed this obsession, this obsessive research, reading, investigate, hunt, acquire process, which continues today. Before that, it was just more of a I just want watches, and then you'd be in a store and buy watches, and there wasn't really the forum hunt or the looking for the history and stuff like that.
When I actually I've met your dad a couple of times now. But I think the first time I met with you and your dad was at the Toronto Timepiece Show for a coffee. It was a random, wasn't a planned meetup. You guys were in the hotel. We had a set and had a coffee, and you guys had just came from Lane. Is it Lane watches that were upstairs?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, well, he hadn't, but I had, and yes,
Yeah, so he was showcasing his watch. He wasn't part of the actual show, but had a little setup in his suite in his hotel, showing some watches off to people that were attending the show. But nowadays, do you gravitate to the smaller independent brands like that more than the earlier days of your watch journey? Or
I want to. The the price barrier is still significant.
yeah,
Um, it's where I can imagine wanting to go. The other element is in the higher end, or say higher value pieces in my collection. I need them to have a certain amount of liquidity
mm,
because I don't have enough money to walk into Chateau d'Ivoire, drop $50,000 on a gold Ulysse Nardé chronograph, which I walk out of the store and is worth half that. I can't do that. Um, I know some people can. It must be a lovely luxury to have that kind of not to worry about that. But I need to consider that if I buy something, it has a degree of liquidity, meaning if I find something else that I want, it won't be terribly difficult to sell it for about the same price. I don't need to make money. I just need to have the liquidity there.
mhm.
So the big problem with independence, unless you're going for some of the really famous ones, is that's the construction is there, they're beautifully made, but the liquidity is still a little bit of an issue. If it's on an FP Journe or something like that, there's a you know Lane watches tends to be, I mean, they're gorgeous, and you don't see them on the secondhand market. They tend to be, you buy them and you keep them.
Yeah.
And that would be a lovely thing. I'm sure I'll get there someday. I'm just a little bit worried about sinking that much money into something that has no kind of open market. Maybe that's a silly way to do it, but that's literally what crosses my mind.
No, that makes 100% sense for sure, man. Yeah.
How has your taste evolved over the years?
It, I'm not sure it has. I kind of had this time frame locked in my mind. It's all around that purchase of that Explorer 2. Because what happened is after we got that Explorer 2, we got on a cruise ship. That's what the basis of this trip was. It was this family trip cruise ship. Grandma was there and everything. And we traveled around to all those Caribbean islands. Those Caribbean islands all have, it's called Colombian Emeralds. There's this big chains of these big jewelry stores that have incredible watch selections, like nothing I've seen around here. And so when I got that Explorer 2, the actual rules to the purchase where I could have anything within a certain, up to a certain maximum. It didn't have to be a Rolex. It could have been an Omega. It could have been a lot, whatever I wanted, but there was this kind of hard maximum. Can't spend more than that. So I spent the rest of the trip kind of going, ooh, should I have waited? Should I have gotten that instead? Or should I have gotten that instead? And there's this list of watches that I kind of debated whether I would have preferred or not, because of course that's what you do, right? After you've kind of walked in. And now my taste is going after all those other watches. So I hunt them all down, trying to find all those watches that I wish I could have had instead of that Explorer 2, which is kind of a silly way to do it, but it's just this matter of kind of almost getting revenge on the watches I couldn't have back then. They're all essentially, you know what? There is one major thing that's evolved. And you mentioned my son with cystic fibrosis. There is an element to his care that involves a lot of timekeeping, a lot of repetitive tasks that are timed in order. And at that point, when he was born and that diagnosis was hit, I became much more interested in chronographs. I because I actually used them. I remember an episode of Scottish Watches, where someone said, who actually uses a chronograph? No one actually uses a chronograph. Write in if you actually use a chronograph. I remember writing and saying, like, I do. I use it every day, multiple times a day to time these physiotherapy sessions. And so you could say that in a way, I became more interested in chronographs at that point. My collection kind of shifted maybe away from primarily dive watches to that. And now in more recent times, I think you might say that a little bit more interest in finer dress watches, not smaller, but finer dress watches. That's become more interesting. And very recently, thanks to the influence of Bosco, someone I'll tell you a little bit about later, he's a vintage collector, and so that Mark and I know, and he's kind of really made me focus on the much older stuff, rather than the neo vintage. But neo vintage are like locked in the 90s, like my musical tastes. I'm just kind of stuck there. That's really the focus of my collection, and it has been since it was contemporary.
Yeah, Bosco's a bad influence. He's also a fountain of knowledge when it comes to older chronographs and the minute details between an Angulus movement and an old Zenith movement. And it's really impressive to watch. And he has an amazing collection. So he's always fun to hang out
That's
with.
cool. I was gonna ask if you have like a theme to your collection, but it sounds like it's quite eclectic at the moment.
It is
Yeah.
too eclectic. That's a problem that I feel I have, because I like the idea of a focused collection. But really, you could say my focus is watches I like,
Mhm.
which results in a large variety, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. Neo vintage is the focus by far. The majority of the pieces you'll find are from that time frame, but there's a few that escape that easily, just because I like them, or I was interested in them, or whatever.
If somebody was to look at your collection right now, who's the oddball? What's the oddball watch in there that might surprise somebody?
Ooh, that's a really good question. Maybe a Garmin Phoenix,
Hmm,
a smartwatch.
yeah.
That would be, and that has a very, I'm very task oriented with my watches. I like my watches to match what I'm doing, and I love fishing in the Arctic. We go salmon fishing, trout fishing in the Arctic, and when you're up there, you're traveling through these river systems, and you'll see kind of grave markers on the side of the river, and you ask your guide about it, and she'll tell you, it's, this some year, some fisherman, some sport didn't make it out. Something happened, he didn't make it out. And last time I went last year, I had a good fall. I slipped just on some rocks, but my knee caught the corner of a very wedge-shaped stone, and it was 30 minutes before I could stand up again. And when that happens up there, it's an issue because if you're not able to walk out, at least if you're an hour away from your boat and you're not able to walk back, not a tiny guy, it's not easy for people to carry you through that kind of, it's either bramble on the shore or slippery rocks with rushing water, not really able to get you out. So you need to get a helicopter. And when you're up there, a helicopter is not, a phone call away. Um, it's an issue. So I decided at some point, I made two decisions. One was a Breitling emergency, and the other was a Garmin that had built-in GPS features in it. So that's probably the oddest one in there, but it keeps, it has a respected position, not because it's a smartwatch, but because a smartwatch is the right watch tool for that particular activity that I like to do.
That's awesome, man. No, that makes total sense. I saw some pictures on your Instagram. I was sort of snooping on there yesterday of your one of your trips up there. It might have been a couple years ago that you posted that one, but that looks like a good time. Is that with Dad too, or?
No, no, that's with a very good friend of mine, who has been my mentor, fly fishing mentor for decades now, and he takes me up there with him. I'm his insurance policy. I'm meant to get him out of there if something goes wrong, and in exchange, I get to tag along, and he teaches me. Fly fishing is one of those sports, one of those activities where it's kind of highly secretive. No one likes to share the best spots, but you tend to take someone on so that after your time, those secrets still have a home.
Hmm,
And that's kind of common, that I've noticed amongst fly fishermen. Um, and yeah, so I'd go fishing with him, but no, not Dad. Dad likes to fish, but not quite as obsessively as I do.
that's awesome.
You sort of mentioned this earlier that your watches are eventually going to become your son's watches. Do you collect with that kind of an intent? Do you think about the legacy of your watches and what comes after?
I will often ask him if he likes a watch, what his opinion is of a new watch that comes in. I don't. I choose them very much for me,
Mm.
though. I don't. He. I kind of approach it the same way. I guess I saw it when I was a kid. I wanted Dad's watches, and it wasn't because it was a Rolex and an Omega. It wasn't because it was a pre-moon Omega. It wasn't the stories involved. It wasn't the value of them. It was because they are Dad's watches. And that's why I wanted them. So I guess I transpose that maybe unfairly, but at the end of the day, it's just watches. But I transpose that on my son that one day he might want Dad's watches, and maybe he'll sell them all, and I'll spit in my grave. Um, but yeah,
So if your collection was reduced to 3 watches, and I know it's a pretty extensive collection.
ooh,
So if you had to choose, like he's already sweating, if you had to choose 3 of them to make the cut, which ones would they be? Now the Garmin, I think is going to have to be an essential part of it, or is that just a tool, not
no,
really
that
considered?
yeah, that I mean that's a convenient tool, but if I had to choose three, that's not making the cut.
Okay.
It would be the 5513, Dad's Pre-Moon Speedmaster, and and then what? And then maybe my Was it the Breguet
Oh yeah,
Heritage? Is it the Heritage?
that's a beautiful watch.
Do I have the right name? I feel like I've got the wrong name.
It's the one with the escapement on the front of the dial with the itty bitty dial in the middle, and it's all moving parts underneath. The
Yeah.
Breguet. I don't know. I think it's called a Heritage.
So,
Yeah.
no, it's not.
I thought you were going to say the Blancpain, your 50 fathoms.
The 50 fathoms. The 50 fathoms is nice, but be honest, I'm I guess getting a little bit tired of it, which happens sometimes. So I've tradition. That's it. It's a tradition. The
Tradition.
Breguet
I think
tradition. Yeah,
that's
tradition.
very cool.
Yeah, the Blancpain is a funny one. I get tired of it, and then I have this kind of rule: if I'm getting tired of something and I'm thinking of selling it, I put it on one more time, and then I kind of fall in love with it again. So it's this on off with the 50 fathoms. I love it. I love the way it looks. I catch. It's one of those watches that you catch yourself staring at.
And it's the
Um,
big one too. It's like the 45 millimeter job.
yeah, I'm not. I love big watches.
And me too.
Big watches were when I started collecting, the bigger was better. Like if you had the small Seamaster or the mid size, like it was not the one you wanted. It suffered major price reductions. They couldn't sell them. You wanted the bigger, for bigger was better. It was a very simple rule. And right or wrong, that stuck with me. But I have a decent sized wrist, and I find a smaller watch, which I do wear sometimes. They tend to rotate around my wrist. Like I can't keep them to stay
Mm.
flat, and that's the part that bothers me. So I want a watch that's has enough size that it will sit without rotating, without being super tight. So it has enough air, enough space for air to kind of get under the bracelet or the strap, but is got enough lug to lug that it won't kind of shift. I won't be kind of uncomfortable all day with it. That's kind of my criteria for. And that's why a lot of the dress watches, like the tradition, that are a little bit bigger. This mine is the 40 mil one is perfect because it's slim, it's dressy, but it's not tiny. It's not
Hmm.
36 mils or 34 mils. It's got a much more. It's got presence, and that's the other thing is presence. I like being, when I look across the room and I see someone with a nice big watch and I can identify it and it has presence. I love that. And I know the trend right now is to go towards smaller watches, but I just don't. I stopped caring about trends
Hey, listen,
a
that's a
while ago.
trend that's within our scope of influence, right? Within the watch nerds, the smaller watches. I was at a birthday party last weekend for my wife's cousin, and it was her 40th birthday. So we had a lot of people there that are in their 40s, and all of the men that were sitting around the table were wearing large watches. They weren't anything special. There was, Invictas and stuff like that, and mall stuff, but they were all large. No one was wearing a small
Hmm.
watch. So I still believe that it's in the general population, in the normies or the muggles, that large watches are still very popular.
Well, and that's supported by sales
Sales,
data. Yeah,
sales, yeah.
all the big I've heard this said, at least. I mean, it's not like I've sat down and spoken to the brands myself, but I've heard it said that all the big brands still sell stuff around the 40 plus 42
Oh yeah, of course.
millimeter mark. That's the stuff that
Why
sells.
is Breitling still making 43 millimeter watches? Why is Omega making new models at 43 millimeters? Why is Tag still making 43 millimeter dive watches? Like it's because they sell. People like wearing them, and older guys like me, our eyesight's not what it used to be, so it's kind of nice to have a dial that's large enough to see. Like your Breguet, I love your Breguet. I love it. I can hold it and stare at it and not even know what time it is. I
I
love it.
can't read the time
But
on it
that
either.
itty bitty dial that's just on the top of the face it's just a little small.
It's funny, like when I show watches to, because I have different stuff in here all the time, and when I'm showing watches to family members that aren't really watch people, they a lot of times equate the weight of a watch to the
Yes,
quality. You know what
that's
I
right.
mean? Like, so,
That's right.
yeah, my brother-in-law especially, if it's not heavy, it's like, oh, this is cheap feeling
Yeah.
or
Well, my
whatever.
wife, I'll give her
Yeah,
a titanium watch to hold, and she's like, "Oh, this feels like junk." She goes,
yeah,
"Yeah, but it's titanium. You don't understand."
yeah.
So, which watch gets the most wrist time versus the one you admire most in the collection?
Ooh, the most wrist time. I
Or it's
don't.
always the newest one that gets the most wrist time?
Well,
Like,
yeah. So whatever's kind of in that honeymoon phase is getting the most time. Um, Maybe probably still the OP41 green.
really?
Which yeah, it's you're going to be surprised because I know I've expressed that I'm kind of thinking of selling it,
Yeah.
um, but it is a very easy watch to wear. It's a comfortable watch. It's not too blingy, not too small. Exudes what Rolex means to me, meaning, a brushed finish, simple. Um, the green dial is that Rolex green. I mean, it is to me, it kind of embodies the concept of the brand. So there's that element. That Speedmaster gets a lot of wear. Um, that one's worn off. There's a Citizen. I can't remember. It's the Citizen Wave, maybe. There was We were in New York City recently, and there's a Citizen boutique right in the heart of, I guess, Times Square, right in the center of the touristy part. And I went in there, and what a cool shop that is! What a cool store! And I was looking around, and they had a decent sale on. I was looking through all the models, and I'm always, the one watch that I've never found is the perfect vacation. Maybe the perfect vacation watch is a watch that can go to a lovely fancy dinner at night, but can also go into the ocean and the hot tub. It probably has a metal bracelet so it can handle heat and sweat. It has GMT function is not necessary, but an easy way to adjust the time that doesn't require multiple button presses. The catch is I don't want it to be something that will have my arm chopped off for, but at the same time, I don't want to be bored with it for 2 weeks. I want to sit there. I'm also a little bit obsessive about ultralight packing when I go anywhere. So I will only bring one watch. I will not bring two. So I'm trying to find this watch that kind of covers it all. So why the tangent? Back to that Citizen, I think it's the Wave.
It's a satellite wave, I think it's
It's a
called.
satellite Wave, yeah. So it was a reintroduction of a version they had a little while ago. It's in their super titanium. It has the fastest GPS acquisition time, period. It's like under 3 seconds. You get off the plane as soon as you're out of the tube, boom, it's set. Like three. I mean, your full size Garmin handheld GPS can't acquire satellites that fast. It's a perpetual calendar. It has a adventuring dial. It's solar. I never have to worry about winding it. I never have to worry about the battery dying. I never have to worry about servicing. You literally can't service them, right? They're sealed back. It's this kind of perfect does all. It's waterproof enough for my level of ocean swimming. I get past 10 meters and I freak out and go back to the surface. So 100 meters is going to be more than enough. And and it kind of covers all those bases. So that watch gets an awful lot of grab and go, and I find it beautiful. It's modern. There's no heritage inspired. There's no back catalog business. It's a thoroughly modern, beautiful, well made watch. And I saw this thing in New York in the boutique, and it was not inexpensive. It was 2,000 something, and they had a sale, and I got all excited. And I was going to buy it, but then it turned out that the sale did not cover that particular model. So I was with that and the exchange rate, and I kind of abandoned it. Back at the hotel, I did a quick search and I found it in Canada, brand new, one of our Canadian authorized dealers for like half the price without the exchange rate. So as the problem with the boutique is that they don't discount really. They had a little sale, but not really discounted. Whereas here, a Citizen is easily found discounted. So I bought that, and that's the closest thing I have to satisfying that vacation watch. But then it also, because of its go anywhere, do anything approach, I find myself wearing it an awful lot. It was what I was wearing today, until I put on the Zenith just to bug Mark. But the majority of the day was wearing that watch. It's just so easy and pleasant and beautiful. And I also like the fact I always choose the underdog. I like the fact that Citizen is still fighting that underdog fight compared to Seiko, and they're not getting the respect they deserve for the level of watchmaking that they're currently doing. Probably because it's all involving, or most of it involves a battery. But still, I think there's a lot of cool technology that goes into those watches and those eco drives, and the pure specifications or the pure technical capabilities of those watches is really impressive. So that one gets an awful lot of wrist time, and that's probably top three right there.
I like the techie watches too. I love to have at least one, and I don't at the moment because I tend to flip and trade and stuff all the time. But the other brand that I like for that type of watch is the the Oceanus, Casio Oceanus, has sort of a similar tech as that particular watch. Those are
Yep.
perfect travel watches. And I find when I have quartz watches like that too, I just grab them all the time. They're easy, they're
Yeah.
set in the morning. They're easy. They're usually comfortable. Like, yeah.
Hey,
So
back in the day, I had a Antessa. Do you guys know that brand?
Mm,
It's Citizen. It's a higher end version of Citizen, sold only in Japan. I'd gotten it from Higuchi-san. It was full titanium, that brights, not brights, that's Seiko's titanium, but the super titanium that Seiko,
yeah.
that Citizen has, with the satellite wave and all that stuff. And it had a ceramic portion of the bezel on there before ceramic was even a thing. And the clasp had micro adjust. You just held down the pushers longer, and you can shorten or lengthen the length of the bracelet. This is well before micro adjust was even a thing. It was an amazing watch. I don't know. I should dig up a picture. That one was really cool. Anyways, sorry. Go ahead, Bob.
There's an interesting thing about their super titanium. Like you, Mark, you know that I like to pick on brands for their marketing for
Yeah,
material, and super titanium is fantastic. I mean, it's basically hardened titanium with the standard heat quench process, and then it's clear anodized,
yeah,
just like any sort of anodizing. And anodizing, just like the anodizing, when like Omega has their new Planet Oceans or Seamasters with the aluminum bezel, right? We see
yeah.
aluminum bezel. It's not the aluminum bezel, it's the anodized aluminum, because anodizing is very close. It's actually a form of ceramic. It's very close to the hardness of diamond, hard to scratch. That's why they made those bezels, right? So this clear anodizing on it makes it really this scratch-proof integrated coating. And there are some other major Swiss brands, we've talked about this, Mark, that use terms that imply, ceramic,
Yeah,
but or certain types of ceramic, but are really just anodized aluminum. Sorry, anodized titanium. And it works. Like it works. It works for bezels. It looks like, look at the bezel on my 5513. It's ghosted. It's paler, but it is not scratched up. The stuff is, it's a hard, effective coating, and I think that's why Omega has gone back that way,
mm.
because it just works. It's simple and it works, and it doesn't crack like real, ceramic or porcelain type ceramics.
Or it doesn't shatter.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the fishing a little bit earlier. Is there any, and then Mark, I know is going to talk about a project that's watch adjacent here soon, but is there any other hobbies you're into other than the watches?
Watches, fly fishing.
Do you tie
I
your own
like,
flies?
yes, I do. Tie my own flies. I wrap my own rods. Um, no, other than that, I had this series of clocks that I like to build. And Mark, you kind of you touched on one before, but they're not all atomic. One was atomic. But the first one, I call them tower clocks because they're all built the same way. It's a teak square of wood with four brass columns, and as those columns rise, there are plates that go up. There's one behind me. Of course, you can't see that. There's these plates that rise, and each plate kind of has a function or something like that. So they're these built like these towers. I don't know why I did that. That's the aesthetic I was hunting. The first one was particularly interesting for me. It was a relay-based clock. So, for anyone who doesn't know what a relay is, it's a switch, just like a light switch, but it's controlled by a small electromagnet. So turn the magnet on, the switch closes. Turn the magnet off, and a spring pulls it back. So this is a very basic switch, and if you look at kind of any sort of timekeeping digitally, it's all done with transistors, and transistors are very similar. It's a little switch controlled by an electrical signal. So I said, well, if we're doing this with transistors, we could probably do this with relays. And there's a few examples of some complex relay-based electronic calculators. There's an 8-bit adder that's out there that's probably the world's most complicated, that are done as it's a pure exercise of using the medium. It's like if you see someone, make a painting. You see this every once in a while. Someone will do a painting or portrait that's composed of bottle caps, and they've kind of arranged the different colors and logos on the bottle caps to give you this final image when you pan far enough back. It's just an exercise in the medium, not so much with the result, but not so much for the result. And building this clock was it was a real test. It's interesting because I look back on the schematics they're all hand drawn on graph paper. Right now, this is going back 20 years. I can't read them anymore. I've lost the ability to read these blueprints that I drew. And you start, like, the more I got into this trying to make this timekeeping circuit with this very arcane methodology of switches. This is going back to, like, the Enigma machines. When you're decoding encrypted signals with mechanical computers, it was just to see if I could do it. But you get this interesting concept. If you're using a transistor, if you apply a signal, it switches almost instantaneously. That's why you put a few billion of them together and you have a computer that's super powerful. But in a relay, just like when you flick your light switch, there is a certain amount of time from the moment you start to apply pressure to the moment when it's flipped over and the current is allowed to pass. There's a delay there.
Mhm.
And if you're trying to count seconds, and a third of that second is in what I called flight time, it was the flight of the switch going from one side to the other, then you had this big problem. So when you start a digital circuit like that, you kind of start with this formula, or this kind of numeric plan, this mathematical expression, but it doesn't take into account, it assumes instantaneous reaction. It never takes into account. So in developing this binary circuit, I had to come up with a form of trinary logic because it had three states: on, off, and flying in between. And that was the kind of the aha moment developing that, and it was all for that. And the output of the clock, the display is in binary, so you have to be able to read binary to be able to understand what the clock is showing you. And I think there's a picture of it on my Instagram page. I can't remember. I'll put one up if there isn't.
I don't
The
I
the
don't think there is. I was looking to see if I could see some pics of it, but
Yeah, it's been something I've been meaning to do for a while now, is to kind of not not publicize, that's the wrong word, but make them more visible. The problem with it is you can't run it for more than 5 minutes, because the switches, there's so much current being drawn by all these relays that the primary timekeeping relays, the ones that actually do the tick tock, end up eventually welding themselves shut from the sparks. The spark of the switch opening and closing eventually welds the relay shut, and it has to be replaced. So the clock can only keep time for about 5 minutes before it needs major servicing. That was the first one. The second one was it was a gift to my father one Father's Day, and it's a uh, uh, rubidium standard. So it's a atomic clock that uses a rubidium standard. It's not as fancy as a hydrogen standard, but it's a true atomic clock. And same tower format. That one has a more traditional digital output, but it's accurate to 1 second in 1,000 years or something like that. The only time he has to reset it is after a power failure. And the one I've been working on the longest, which has been sitting on my bench and I have had a lot of trouble with, is a ovenized quartz. So when we look at ultra precise timekeeping kind of before atomic, the big problem with quartz timekeepers is they varied by temperature. So if you look at Breitling super quartz or similar technologies, what they would do is they would measure ambient temperature, the temperature of the wrist, and adjust the output of the quartz oscillator to compensate for whether it was warm or cold.
That's what they
And that's
call a
how
thermocompensated quartz.
exactly.
Yeah.
One step above that for laboratory use was ovenized quartz. And what ovenized quartz was is, as it sounds, you take that quartz, you put it in a very precise oven, you bring the temperature up and you hold it there. And that way you eliminate variations. If you bring the temperature considerably over room temperature, then fluctuations in the room are negated. And then if you want to get really fancy, you combine the two technologies and you compensate for any fluctuation while keeping it as in an environment that's as stable as possible. Blah, blah, blah. Right? Now that the audience is asleep. With this, you can make these super accurate clocks. And so what I did, my approach to it was, rather than worrying about the quality of the oscillator and all this stuff, is I wanted to produce an oven that was many degrees more accurate than anything else that was available, so that I could put the oscillator in that and produce near atomic level timekeeping from literally the cheapest quartz oscillator I could find, which were bought from ham radio fests for 25 cents. And that project came along. It's again, it's sitting right behind me. The actual oscillator works. It's in a vacuum chamber to prevent temperature loss. It's extremely accurate, and what I actually got caught on is I decided I wanted a Nixie tube display. I think those became popular for a while, and that was actually kind of hard to do because those Nixie tubes you got to buy them from Russia. They don't really exist here anymore, and that was the hard part. I got caught up on the display, and it's been sitting there now for almost good solid 15 years. But that's yeah, the clocks are the other thing, but those are really long projects. I mean, they're years to make, and they just always kind of exercise an obsessive, strange corner of my brain.
I was doing a little bit of research on atomic clocks before we recorded today, and I've become familiar with the word femtoseconds. Do you know that
Oh,
word?
that's a division. That's a division of seconds to the was it a billionth of a second?
Something like it's like
Yeah,
10 to the power of minus 15 or so. It's like a
yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
it's a
It's
thousandth of a thousandth of a second or something like that.
something like
yeah.
that. It says here that with it would be a clock precise at 10 femtoseconds would be the equivalent of 1 second of accuracy after 50 billion years.
Yeah.
And it sounds like there's such a thing as clocks that are like that, if I'm not.
Yeah, I mean there are in theory, and I think there are some that get close in some experimental labs, but when you actually talk about a box that can sit in for a reasonable amount of money in your lab, a home lab kind of thing, that it's you introduce a whole bunch of other errors. I mean, just to build the atomic clock, I had to build an atomic clock. So before, because I had nothing that could tell me if my atomic clock was accurate or not, because nothing I had was fast enough to determine that. So I had to build an atomic clock as what we call a frequency standard. So in a laboratory environment, we call them frequency standards. They don't display time like we're used to in a 24-hour or 12-hour format. They just produce a very reliable 1 second pulse. Or, if you want to, depends on what you're working with, but the point is it produces, if you're asking for 20 megahertz output, it gives you an exactly 20 megahertz, 20 million pulses per second output. And you use that to measure or to compare other clocks. So just to build these things, at least the high accurate ones, I needed to build higher accurate clocks. That's higher. I'm not speaking well. More accurate clocks to be able to just build the lower ones. The difference being that frequency standard just produces this signal, just a base signal,
Mm.
no timekeeping. The other one I use is a GPS clock, also something I built, and that's because all GPS satellites have a very accurate. That's how GPS works, is by comparing time delays of transmission signals from various satellites. So the whole thing works on counting the time. There's incredibly accurate clocks on board, and basically when a GPS satellite will send out a signal with a timestamp, and then your handheld device will receive that, and based on the timestamp, if it sends it out at noon, they both get to you, but one gets to you at noon and 1 second, and one gets to you at noon and 2 seconds. I mean, I'm dramatically oversimplifying. And then you do that with enough satellites, and your handheld can figure out, well, with these delays, that satellite must be this distance from me, and therefore I must be here. So you can take that timestamp and you can then use that as a reference and effectively have a wireless, ultra high accuracy receiver. And that's, they miniaturize that and they put it in watches like the Wave Scepter.
Yeah, very cool. And how steep was the learning curve when you first got started with the atomic level timekeeping?
It was very steep. At the time, I had I had a girlfriend I didn't like going home to. So I had a computer lab, and I would put a lot of extra hours. She did not become my wife.
Good to clarify that for sure.
Um, so I didn't like going home. So I'd stay there and I'd work. At the same time, I had a client, and he would come by because we had a shop in a shopping mall, and his wife would go to the knitting store, and he was bored. So in this little shopping mall I was in, the computer store was the only kind of store that interested him. So he'd come by, and he was a talker. I mean, he would talk your ear off just nonstop, and seemingly the more work you had to get done, the more he wanted to just chat. And he interestingly used to be a CBC radio engineer. So he was the engineers that built the towers, that built the transmitters back in the day, when if you needed a radio transmitter, a 50,000 watt radio transmitter, you sat down with a soldering iron and you made it, because there was no store to go buy it from. There was no industrial supply for that kind of stuff. And it's really, really, really interesting guy. And at some point, I remember giving in to the endless chit chat, and decided to just kind of, rather than keeping my head down and trying to work, to actually engage the guy and try and extract some of his knowledge. And very quickly, we got into the fact that I like watches, and he brought up this concept of time bases, and we started exploring like what could be done. And the next thing I know, he had a basement full of vintage radio test equipment, which is works perfectly well up into about 10 megahertz. And at the time, my focus was 1 megahertz. So the new stuff has got, it's smaller, it's got digital displays, and it can measure faster signals. But the old stuff was, if you didn't need the speed, the old stuff worked perfectly well. And so he started bringing this stuff over to my lab and equipping my lab, until I suddenly had this ability to design electronics and work with them in ways that I was blind to before. So that's when it started. I would sit there late at night with this lab full of equipment and see, what is this quartz crystal doing? What is this doing? Like, how can I make this better? And what happens if I do this? And what happens if I change the temperature? And all these various things. And it just became a bit, well, it became a bit obsessive. The technical element of it, like I was almost collecting the knowledge, the through experiment, through doing it with my hands. And I loved it. I was always an electronics hobbyist, I guess, from the years gone by. But that's effectively, kind of how it started, and why it started was just this. Keith Baker was his name.
How long did it take to create some of these things? Like, is this like multiple years to build, or?
The relay clock was 5 years. The atomic clock was probably 2, and I'm now on 15th year of the quartz. That the idea is a quartz that can perform like an atomic clock. That's the challenge. Each one of them kind of has a challenge, a resistance point
Mhm.
that I'm attempting to overcome, and that's this one's just trying to get that level of accuracy out of off the shelf cheap quartz.
Yeah, you got to post these things, man. I want to check them out, see what they look like. Holy crap!
I'll send you some pics. Part of
Yeah,
the problem is, 20 years ago when I started the first project, phone cameras were not what they are today. Like, the pictures that I have from the development days suck.
you know what? It's funny too nowadays, because I was giving it just a little search last night and a bit this afternoon. Is there's YouTube videos now on how to do a lot of this stuff,
Yeah.
which you wouldn't have had then. So
No, a lot of it is, it's a bit of it's a contentious point, because it bothers me that what used to be so hard is so easy. It's like coding. It, you put a few phrases into Claude, and it spits out a working application for you now. It's takes a little bit of the fun. Well, that's what I got to do, is I just have to remember the fun I had doing it, because it really was a lot of focus. And that's when I'm in that zone, when I'm focused on a problem like that. That's what I love.
yeah, that's cool.
At that level of precision, did it change how you think about mechanical watches?
Yeah, it made me care a lot less.
Really?
So yeah, I became, I really don't care what aside from, poor accuracy, potentially meaning my watch needs a service. Other than that, I don't use 5 minutes a day. 5 minutes is probably the boundary. I like a watch that gets me to a meeting on time. But let's face it, I just take out your phone and look at Instagram, and there's the time. So I stopped caring a little bit, because I loved watches, mechanical watches particularly, for a completely different reason. And I loved them for the problem they solved, much the way the relay clock did something that it shouldn't have or didn't need to. I felt the same way about mechanical watch. You know, there's a cheaper, easier, more accurate way to do it. So we're not doing this for anything other than the fact that we can do this mechanically without a battery, and that became far more interesting to me than how accurately it did it. It's always fun when a watch keeps time, but I mean, frankly, these some days I'll switch a watch, I'll change watches 3 times a day. So in those cases, if I'm lucky, the time gets set each time. If I'm really lucky, the date gets set each time. But chances are, it never gets enough wrist time to become inaccurate. You know, even a watch that's off 5 minutes a day, if it's only worn for a third of the day, will never really show you its error in any practical terms. And that's kind of the way I see it.
Yeah, maybe the cure to my disease is to build a clock that takes 5 years to build and be more accurate than everything else, and maybe then I won't care so much about the accuracy of the watches I wear.
It puts things into perspective sometimes.
I bet. So, what's the most irrational watch purchase you've ever made?
Ulysse Nardin Marine chronometer chronograph in 18 karat. That thing's a boat anchor. It's interesting because with
Has a boat
recent
anchor for a logo, so it's kind of
there you go. It's a defensive weapon. You can beat someone to death with that thing. Which is useful if they're trying to steal it from you. With recent gold prices, I realized that the watch is worth more scrapped than it is intact, which is scary. Even more if I were to find a buyer for the movement and stuff like that. But that's the most. I mean, it just screams audacious, right? It's just totally my oligarch watch. But at the same time, I put that on. It's watch. If you look at it in pictures, if you read reviews, if you hold it in your hand, it gives you one feeling. If you actually strap it on and wear it, and you look at some of the details, you realize just how underappreciated Ulysse Nardin is. How really, really, I mean, these guys with case design, these guys are top notch and just don't get quite the love they deserve. I know it's changing now, but mainly revolves around the Freak
Mm.
model. But they've been doing just really beautiful work for a long time and going, really under the radar. And again, yeah, I think I mentioned before, like the underdog. That's the stuff I love. I love the thing that nobody else is going to have on their wrist. I love the thing that nobody else wants. Part of that is, there's value there. If you can find a watch that you really love that no one else really cares about, you're going to get a better deal on it than trying to buy another Rolex. But I just love having the stuff that is like anti-hype, the opposite of hype. Hype bothers me. I find it, I don't know. It's why I probably, yeah, hype is just, to me, one of the biggest turnoffs in this industry, in this hobby as a whole. The hype is the thing that kills it for me. So as soon as there's something, even the OP, that's the thing that will kind of push me off sometimes of choosing it to wear is that it's, recognizable. It's not, I realize it's not a Daytona, but compared to Ulysse Nardin, it is highly recognizable, much more hyped. Oh, is that a Rolex? Yes, it is.
So you're not getting in line at the Swatch boutiques for the new Royal Pop, then I take it.
Oh my God. Oh my, in the, the minute I heard, I don't know if those are, I've seen all the renderings. I don't know. Was it actually released? Was it fine? Was it,
I think it's
they
May
just,
16th.
Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah, it is.
that whole line of Swatch, moon watches and the Blancpain crossover there with their bioceramic, plastic. It's just plastic. You can grind up your grandmother's teacup, mix it into some epoxy resin, and you have bioceramic.
Mhm.
It's not, and that drives me nuts. So the high, okay, so the marketing turned me off. Going back to the Moon Swatch specifically, I know you asked about the modern one, but the marketing turned me off, and then the hype response to it and those lines and cues to get it really just, I mean, I was like, this, even if I liked it, this will never be, I will punish them by never this silly, but that's the way my mind works. So this new AP crossover, I mean, it's just there's
We're
it's
not
not.
sure if it's EP. This is people are
Oh,
assuming.
that's okay. So
It seems like it though, man.
It
Like,
makes no sense at all. Why would
yeah.
I get it if Omega does it? It's within the Swatch group. Swatch uses their intellectual property. They use their name, their case shape, and all that stuff, and the ties in. Same with Blancpain. I get it. You're focusing in, getting in people who are not into watches. They're learning about these other brands. What's Audemars Piguet have to gain? First of all, they can't keep up for demand right now.
Yeah.
So why would they soil their name and make a plastic version of it to gain more popularity? About, it makes no sense at all.
The font is just so similar though. Like,
Yes, agreed,
it's like
agreed.
identical.
And I
Like,
think that they're hoping that's the case. I think Swatch is hoping that's the case. I have a feeling. Look, I don't know anything from anything, and I'm just some idiot with a podcast. Uh, I think they're just trying. They're trolling us. They're trolling the collectors, and everybody's going nuts. Look at all the renderings people are making, and how Google Gaga they're going. And just to touch on the subject you mentioned there about the hype and everything, and owning a watch that no one else is really into, and you'll get good value that way. It's one of the reasons why I like my Fortis so much. I've had it now for 3 months, 4 months maybe, which is long for me. There's nothing wrong with that watch. Like there's no
30, 40 years, collector years, normal collector
yeah,
years.
exactly. There's nothing wrong with the watch. Like it's got everything I've ever wanted. It's got a chronograph feature that I don't use, but I think it's really cool in this specific watch. And I think they mentioned it. The one of the people from Fortis was on the Sketchy Boys podcast last week, I think it was. I listened to it yesterday on my drive back from the office, and he said the same thing. He says, if you had to choose between, within the $5,000 category, would you buy a Tudor that everybody else has and then it's just common and you get a good quality watch, or do you get the better quality watch at the same price that no one knows about, and a watch that can take beating, that can add scratches to, that will survive most of anything you'll throw at it and still look pretty damn cool in the process? And I tend to agree with the guy. I really
Yeah.
enjoy my Fortis. I wore it all week while I was at the office, and it had been a while since I worn 3 or 4 days straight because of the Eterna I had just gotten. But yeah, I agree with that 100%.
But Mark, you and I came up. We started in a time when Rolex was respected, but it was not what it is today. It was not a two brand plus everybody else landscape. You wanted to have a Rolex, you wanted to have an Omega, you wanted to have a Zenith, you kind of like a one of each kind of scenario. And that's why you could walk into a boutique and every Rolex would be in the case for every boutique you went to. They were all there.
Yep.
There wasn't this one-sided AP Patek Rolex versus everybody else, where everyone's kind of scrambling to get a piece of that pie. It wasn't like that. So you and I come up, like, we cut our teeth in a time when collecting was diversity,
Yep.
and hype culture has really kind of focused that and changed it.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. So if you had and could own any historical timekeeping device, not just a wristwatch, what would it be?
Any historical, that would probably be, there's that Vacheron Constantin. It's a pocket watch, the most complicated pocket watch ever made. Can't really get a name for that.
Wasn't the Patek Philippe had that? They call it the egg timer with the two sides?
They've all played that, but Vacheron had one too. And I remember, what's it called? That, or maybe, so an easier answer for that would probably be that Vacheron Constantin dual time overseas Everest. You remember that?
Yeah, the one that
that
the new ones are
prototype?
based off of
Yeah.
in
I mean,
titanium. Yeah.
that was, I rarely fell so hard for a watch when I first saw it as that, even with that, put together bracelet that didn't really, you could tell it was already fraying and stuff like that in the image. That was such a cool watch.
I love the new stainless steel versions that
I
just
do
came
too.
out.
Yeah.
I mean, they nailed that. I talked about it last show that they nailed that watch. I wish it wasn't a Vacheron Constantin, and I wish it wasn't priced that way. But I love it. I think it's absolutely stunning.
Vacheron is for the Holy Trinity, Vacheron was by far my favorite. Probably because they're the underdog in that three. But if you look at what that hype culture has done, you look at AP. It's a one trick pony. It doesn't take away from what the Royal Oak is, but at the same time, it makes it a far less interesting product. You look at Patek and you look at some of their recent design choices and some of the CEOs' comments and stuff like that. And it's just
Yep.
like it's distasteful and
Yeah.
it's tone deaf and it's design wise questionable. And then there's some interesting Instagram accounts that compare the finishing Grand Seikos and Pateks and stuff like this. And you look at how the finishing has kind of fallen off a little bit on their, at least their non-super high-end stuff. And then you got just Vacheron sitting in the back, ticking away, doing what they've always done, at the same level they've always done, just excellence, period. Not worrying about the hype, not worrying about everybody else. And even seemingly when they hit a home run with that Everest, they don't make it. They wait a few years and come up with a, dumbed down version or simplified version of that watch, but they don't just jump on it and release a bioceramic version that for it. They could, all they had to do was make that watch, and it would have been the next Nautilus, at least for a couple news cycles, but they didn't. And that's part of that makes me really love that brand. It's a funny thing about our hobby, right? Is we're almost as much in love with the brand and what the brand means and the story that it tells as we are the actual watch. Your story of the Fortis, it's as much about Fortis as it is about that particular model. Um, and that's and that make to me Vacheron will always be the top of that holy trinity as long as it keeps that kind of attitude of we're just on our path. No one's gonna knock us off of it.
They made that stupid pocket watch last year, the most complicated pocket watch in the world, and it looked great on the table. But then when someone was actually holding it or standing next to it, you noticed that it was the size of a dinner plate and it was about 3 hockey pucks thick. Like, whose pocket is that going into?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's why you said, I think your original question was any watch ever made.
Yeah,
You know,
historically.
that's not the watch I'm going to wear every day,
Yeah,
but would that be something cool to sit on your desk and play with? It's
yeah. And it's one of those perpetual
impressive.
calendars. If you wind it too fast or miss, screw up the date, you got to send it back. Someone's gonna readjust it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you were talking about the hunt. All of us are kind of into the hunt part of things too, and your recent one was the Zenith. What are you hunting for now? What's the next? Anything on the list?
Yeah, that's easy because it's been on the list since it came out, and I just haven't found the right version yet. But it's the original Planet Ocean, the with a 2500D variant of the movement, the orange bezel, in the what is it, the 42 millimeter. I think it was the mid size back then. It was like 45.5,
And then 42. Yeah.
42, and then I think there was a smaller one, but
No,
whatever.
not
No, it was just
not the
two.
versions. Yeah, there's those two versions.
But the orange one, and I can remember when that came out, and it was like orange, and bright orange was like this new. And now finding a bright colored orange something on a watch is fairly common. And I know they didn't invent it, but they certainly brought it to the forefront, the use of that punchy orange. And that's when that was new, I wanted it. And I've always kind of tried to track down. Trick is a 2500D variant of it, which brings it into a little bit of a narrower window. They're out there. I almost accepted a C variant very recently, but I couldn't. We couldn't meet eye to eye on the final value of trade that was involved. So that's kind of one of the few watches still on my list that I'm hunting. I did see. We went to the event where they launched the new Planet Ocean. Mark, you and
Yep.
I,
Yep.
and I was not impressed when I saw it, probably because of my love for the original one. That clouded my opinion. I think at this point, I just saw some pictures of one today, and it's really cool.
Yeah,
I
I like that
was
watch a lot.
I was wrong. So maybe the new Planet Ocean, but I tend to I many times I wanted or tried to buy a modern Omega and just don't fall in love. The honeymoon period kind of wanes real quick, and then it's to me it's an it is so high tech that it's lost a little bit of what I'm after in a mechanical watch.
Yeah, you can actually, you nailed it. If you compare the old Planet Oceans and the original James Bond Seamasters, and you look at the new ones, there's a lot of hand finishing that's gone. The bracelets are too perfect. The edges are too sharp. Everything is just too. It's lost some charm there, I find.
And this will sound funny, but the movements are too decorated. And what I mean by that is
Yeah.
the surface that you can see is highly decorated. As soon as you go one layer deep, there's no decorating, and that to me feels disingenuous. And it feels like again, there's repetitive themes like marketing. We're
Mm.
just here's lipstick on a, well, it's not a pig, but lipstick on what you can see, and underneath that is just plain old movement. There's nothing wrong with plain old movement. It's kind of what I love about older Rolexes is the design of these movements were made to do a few things: to be indestructible, to need as little service as possible, or just keep working without it, whether you got it or not. And when they did get service, to be very simple and easy to service.
Yeah.
I can remember servicing my dad's 5513 for $80 at the Swiss watch shop here in Montreal. And when I asked him why it was so cheap, and my Omega was more expensive, because it was so easy to service them. That was back, before you were charged based on how much the watch cost you. It's a more modern phenomena. But back then, it was easier to service than a 2824. They were hard. Those Eddas, those cheap Eddas, were harder to work on.
They're also
They
a
hadn't put
lot
as much.
smaller.
Yeah, and so that kind of thinking is gone, and I don't love the fact that Omega tries to pretend like they are something they're not. Here's this beautiful finishing, and I admit it, they're beautifully finished, that see-through case back, but I know it's not real. I know it's surface level only. There's nothing deeper, and I know it's all machine done, and it feels to me like, what are they pretending to be here? And that bothers me. And I know it's really like obsessive, but it's things like that I think about when it comes to these modern. So I try and buy modern, this mentality of, I want a modern Omega in my collection, and then I buy one, and there's just no romance in it. None of that love of the watch, deep appreciation really develops, and I end up passing it on.
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's time to flip the script.
My time
James, yeah.
to quiz you guys. Well, I've got a million questions about Vancouver, because I didn't get to go.
Yeah.
I hate flying, and Vancouver is far enough away that Montreal's coming up, and Toronto is just the place to be. So I skipped on Vancouver like I did last year, and I just die of FOMO every time I make that decision. But man, looking at some of your pictures, Mark, it killed me. So start off with like we saw the advantages and the limitations of the Toronto venue. There's some, depending on the time of day, there's some really cool stuff. Like the venue itself worked really well, but it's hard. It's always hard to make all conditions perfect in all scenarios. The venue for Vancouver looked like it was like floor to ceiling glass.
Pretty much. It's floor ceiling glass on the edges of the building, obviously, but it's a large open space building. So if you were more in the center of the space, you didn't get that amazing light. For Isotope, we had these camera lighting, these camera tubes that you inflated, and we put them on our sign, so we had plenty of light for the first time in a long time. So that was great. The venue itself is beautiful. It's all wood beams and all that stuff. And this year had less brands than the year before. And the way Jason laid it out was, in my opinion, perfect. In the middle of the venue, there were couches for media to go take pictures and hang out in. And, if you're celebrity, podcast people, whatever, they got to hang out in that little space. And all the brands were along the edges of the walls. And there was lots of space to hang out and talk and chat. I think the space was amazing. Toronto is out of this world, but it can get very congested, especially in the parts that are a little narrower, like where Doxa and Zin were last year and all that. They can get pretty bottlenecky. But if you hang out long enough, eventually you will get to talk to people. But yeah, Vancouver was quite special, and its location right on the water is just, yeah, it was great.
Something else.
What you think, Bob?
Bob, you were there too, right?
Yeah, and the one thing I love about that spot is not just the venue, but the whole surrounding area. It's like this little pocket. So no matter where you go, whichever little restaurant or pub, it's just like watch people everywhere.
Yeah.
So many like great little spots just in walking distance, in literal spitting distance from the venue. Yeah, location was everything with
Was
that
it downtown Vancouver? Like, was
No,
it
North Van.
right?
North Vancouver.
So
So
C bus from downtown.
yeah. So you have the view, the skyline is right in front of you the entire time. You know?
Amazing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful spot. It is a beautiful spot for sure. For it.
Yeah, I took my wife to this show she'd never been to any show, so it was the first time she came, and it was the first time going to Vancouver. And when we landed, we put $80 each on a bus pass. They call it the Compass Pass. So getting on and off all the public transportation. And in the space and time that we were there, so we were there from Friday to Thursday, so 6 days. We still had $40 on each of our passes left, and we were on and off the C bus multiple times a day. We took the bus and public transit to, a few mountains and some other provincial parks and stuff. Like, we really used the crap out of those passes, and it's just so easy to access. And the C bus is just plain old fun to take. It's like 15 minutes to get across.
Did Elizabeth come to the actual show? Did she?
Yeah.
She actually. And
Yeah.
What was So I know she likes watches, but
likes
she's not
loose.
obsessed like we are.
Correct.
What was her take? Like, what did she give you kind of an opinion of what it's like seeing that many watch nerds in a room going crazy over these?
Yeah, we were kind of lucky because our brother-in-law happened to be in Vancouver on business and had the evening off on the Friday for the VIP thing. And so she came, and they got to hang out together, and they went from table to table, and I infected him years ago. Like, he's got a Mito GMT, he's got a couple of watches, a Hamilton and some other stuff. So he's just starting off on his journey, and he was having a ball going from table to table, and she was seeing it through his eyes. And they were like, "Oh, what about this one? And look at the color of that one. Oh, that one's made of bronze." And by the time they finished doing all that, and it took them a couple of hours to go through all, and George, my brother-in-law, talks a lot and loves to talk to people. And so they went from booth to booth on the VIP night. And by the time they got to me, they're both 100 miles an hour. And there was this one, and there's this other one, and this other guy was really nice, and this guy had a cool story. So they finally got it. You know what I mean? Like, my wife finally got it. And she even said it. She says, "I finally understand why guys will have more than one watch. I get it now." And then from that evening, we went to the RZE, the Calibrated Wrist hosted an evening at a brew pub or something like that. And we went. My wife and George came with us, and we hung out. But we were pretty tired by then, and we traveled that day. But yeah, she had a lot of fun.
She was having fun for sure. She was right in with the group. I think it was cool for her to see you in that element. You know what I mean? Like, she hears about it and stuff, to actually see you in that scene and had everybody there. And yeah, she was she was having fun.
Funny story. She came to hang out with me at the Isotope booth at one point on Saturday afternoon. And the guy from not Circa, Beaubleu, that cool dude that likes to play the music, and stuff, he just took off, and she says, "Can you watch this?" He put my wife there at the booth at the Beaubleu, and then all of a sudden there's 6 people in front of her asking her questions about the watches, and I turn, I can see a deer in headlights. Like, I'm in trouble, because some dude wanted to know how the deploying class attached to the leather strap, and she like had no clue. So I went and helped her out. That was pretty funny.
Isn't that kind of similar to the way you got connected with Isotope at
A
the
little
first
bit.
Toronto show?
Yeah, a little bit. I didn't sell any Beaubleus though.
No. What was the RZE Calibrated Wrist event like? Like, tell me about it. I haven't seen much come out of that picture wise or anything. How did it compare?
That was like a night where the pictures would be. Would be a lot of incriminating pictures coming out of that night. It was actually at a brewery / pub thing, and we had the whole upper floor. Pretty much a good chunk of the brand owners were there. A lot of content creator guys. That was just a fun beer fest, basically.
Yeah, that's what I love about those events. Is like I've gone to the the marathon event in Toronto
Yeah.
both years, and you go to that, and these people who are, to me, it's the closest thing to a celebrity I'd actually be interested in meeting. I'm not starstruck by movie stars and stuff like that, but to like meet James Stacy, or like some of these guys are just they're so embedded in the industry, and their access is so great, and they must have, they've seen every watch. Anyways, I get a little starstruck, and to be able to go to a like a party, and they're right there like the normal human beings that they genuinely are. To me is a little like fantastic. I love it, and you can just go up and start chatting about all the things you've ever wondered, and they'll talk to you, and you get this room full of, especially always impressed me the marathon events when you have, like you said, all the brands there. It's like it really produces a feeling of community in this hobby when all the brands can sit together and have like a blast together, even though they're all directly competing with each other. They're all kind of competing over the same watch budgets, um, but they can come together and have fun.
I find the bigger, I've noticed anyway, the bigger the personality in this watch world, like a guy like James Stacy, the chiller they are. And I think there's a reason for that. Like there's a reason they've got that. So I actually flew in on the same flight as James. And up ahead of me, 3 rows ahead of me, I see TGN on the back of a guy's head. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's James. And we finally landed in Vancouver. And he's like, nice RZE. I had one of those UTD 8000
Yeah.
digitals. He noticed it on we'd met it quite a few times before, but he noticed it on my wrist when I boarded the plane. He's super chill. We were both waiting for rides for about an hour ahead of, as soon as we got off the plane. So we had a good little chat, but he's an awesome guy.
You took a ride from the airport to the venue?
The reason no, we actually he had, I can't remember who was picking it up. He had a friend that was picking him up,
Okay.
and Jason was picking me up.
Okay.
Yeah.
The train is like $3, and it's
Yeah, I know.
faster than
Jason was
driving
at
around the bay.
Yeah. Jason was out that way running some errands and needed help with some of the errands too for the show, sort of out in that part of Vancouver. So that's why. But yeah, it's cool to see all those kind of people like together. The one littlest thing that I'll tell you, my coolest experience of the whole weekend, or one of them was, and it was actually, I think it was the right after I got picked up at the airport, we went straight to Bradley Taylor's workshop. He was accepting delivery for Jason of programs and a couple of different things. His workshop is really close to the venue, but he showed us his whole process, all of his equipment. He had a watch completely deconstructed that he managed to put back together for the Friday night, and this was on Thursday. Like the whole watch was totally apart, including the hour markers, everything.
Wow.
So he showed us the whole process, his finishing processes for the hands, and just, it was wild, man. Like that guy is a true artist. Have you seen his watch yet?
I'm at the last Toronto timepiece show. Like I
Yeah.
just couldn't. I at one point got close, but he was just so popular. I just couldn't
Yeah.
get anywhere near him. So I've only seen the stuff on Instagram. I haven't seen anything. I haven't held it. I haven't been close to one. And I know he had a prototype, or he had something in his pocket that people were talking about at Toronto that,
He was
but
just
I didn't
happy to
get to
see
see
you.
it.
Is that a watch in your pocket, or?
It was just, that's
But
funny.
he was another guy that I'd met him a couple of times, but didn't really get to know him. But I did this weekend, and he was super chill too. Really nice
Yeah,
guy.
really
Yeah.
humble dude. I've met him
Yeah.
a couple of times before that,
Mhm.
and I finally got to see his new watch. He let me play with it, and he didn't let me take any pictures, understandably, because it hadn't been released yet.
Mhm.
Just as we were leaving to go to the marathon event on the Saturday night, ran into him in the street with Elizabeth, with my wife. We were walking towards the C bus, and he stopped to say hello. And I said, "Would you mind showing my wife your watch, just to show?" So he pulls out, and the two dudes from What You Talking About podcast were walking towards us, and I kind of waved them in to come and see this because they hadn't seen it either. And so he showed it to us, and then all four of us standing there waiting for the retrograde seconds to get to 60 and bounce back to 0. So we're just like idiots, just standing there, and all of a sudden, ooh! Anybody walking by us must have thought we were idiots. But anyways, it was really cool, and it's such a beautiful watch. The hour numerals were handmade in platinum,
Wow.
which is bonkers. And then the movement itself, the gear, the train of wheels are actually gold, not plated. They're actually like 18 or 24. I don't know what the carat it was, but it's gold. Just a spectacular. And he's just like such a nice dude. Like I invited him to come on our podcast, and I don't know if he likes talking about himself. You know, he likes talking about his work, but like one-on-one with someone, you know what I mean? Not
Yeah.
on air. So I don't know if I'll be able to get him to come on the podcast. I'll keep trying at it. I think it'd be great. His story is fantastic, and you know his old engine machines he's using for this stuff, and like he's just a great dude. And that marathon party, James, Toronto
Well, that
party's
was
good. The one in Vancouver, I might say, is better. Like that because
that was my next question.
you're in Roldorf's. You're in a watch shop. There are no watches displayed because obviously it took them away like at the end of the day. But it's a wide open space. There's a couple of couches in there, and you know, a lot of the dudes from Vancouver, the photography guys, you know, Big Head Taco and a couple other guys, and a lot of camera nerds are there, and it's just, and they're watch guys obviously, and it's such a cool party. It's such a cool party. The beer was good too. The beer was really good at that party.
I just remembered that when I was talking because I was talking to Bradley about coming on too, and he sort of half agreed.
Yeah,
But
same here.
he also told me that he listens to the podcast while he's working in the
He
workshop.
told me that too. Told me
Bradley, if you're listening right now, come on, man.
Well, he had a question for our guest, for Matt Smith Johnson. He one of his questions is the questions we asked. He
Yeah, that's right.
definitely listens to our show.
Yeah. The other guy that I met, I'll say one other thing, because I noticed on your Instagram when I was snooping yesterday, was the other guy that I met that was really cool was Matt from Aries.
Yeah.
Yeah. I saw that you had
cool
one of his pieces. Did you get that in Toronto, or?
I got that in Toronto. Let's see. No, I didn't. So no, I did not get that in Toronto. What I got that trip in Toronto was I bought a Seiko tuna, Emperor tuna, the one with the ceramic shroud, monocoque titanium case, the 8L movements, like the top dog, and it's rated to 1,000 meters. And he had this cool display. That Matt from Aries had this cool display.
I remember that.
That if you sacrificed your watch to his machine and he'd take it down to 1,200 meters, if your watch survived, you got to keep his watch. And I was, I'd heard stories about these Seiko watches going like 4 times the depth and strapped to the outside of these subs and just being virtually unkillable. And so I was kind of walked in there with like a little bit of confidence. I just bought this like on the other side of the Toronto Timepiece show. And I walk over there and I'm like, yeah, let's do it. Let's put mine in your machine. I want a free Aries watch, And he's like, okay. Because his watches are rated 1,000 meters too. So the whole point of it is that his watch will go 20% beyond its rating than yours.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, are you sure? You just bought that. Are you sure you want to do this? Because just understand, if it breaks, it's gone. It's done. So he put enough doubt into my head that I said, nah, I'll just be happy with my new Seiko and pass on the free Aries. Even though, like in retrospect, I'm so sure that Seiko had an extra 20% in it. Anyways, the watch kind of the Aries watch kind of kept a state in my mind, wore a hole through my brain. And when I got back, he had at the show this white dialed kind of ghost bezeled variant, which he doesn't seem to make any. It was not, one of the configuration options on his website. So he had a special, I guess, around Christmas or Boxing Day or something like that. And I asked him, like, can you make one of these? And he's like, yeah, we can throw one together. And like 2 days later, I had it. I don't even know how it got through customs that fast. He had his watchmaker make it, send it out to me, and and I had it. So it was like in direct consequence of meeting him at the show, but it didn't actually pull the trigger at the show. At that show, I was hoeing and humming between the Aries, the Elliott Brown, and ended up buying the Seiko. And then after that, I bought the Aries, and then the next show after that, I bought the Elliott Brown.
It'd be funny
Um,
is someone buying a seal instrument, one of his big badass ones, and just going show to show and picking up free Aries
Aries?
watches
well,
and just telling
yeah,
them, "You make a living doing that."
yeah, I think he'd catch on pretty quick.
Yeah.
Plus, he seems like the kind of dude you don't really want to try and cheat.
No, no. You
You
know
know?
what? I have a story with this guy. I didn't know him from a hole in the wall in the first Vancouver Timepiece show last year. And when Jose and I showed up, we showed up a little late for the setup. I mean, it's not hard to set up our watches, just little plates and whatever. And when we got there, he had set up his space, and he had a little watchmaker there to putting together things. So he took the power cables from under our table and hooked everything up to for himself. So when we got there, we had nothing to plug in our lights, but he wasn't there. He was probably walking around. So I unplugged his stuff and plugged my stuff up for our show. So when he came back, he was not too happy with me. And so we didn't have a confrontation or anything. It's just that, you know, he wasn't happy. So I wound up
Right.
unplugging to give him back the power, and I ran another wire from behind some other screens to our table, and we were fine. But that whole event, that whole show, he and I were like, oil and water. Didn't really talk to him much.
And
But
you were
then I
like
ran
across
into
from
him
each other, eh? You were like practically across from each other, weren't you?
this time.
No, that
No, we were literally next to each other,
next week, yeah. I
right
knew you
next to
guys
each
were
other.
close, yeah.
And then this time at the Vancouver Timepiece Show, I walked by his booth, and he was all smiles and cheers, and like it was as if it was a different dude completely.
Right.
And then I warmed up to him, and then that was fine. It's just whatever. It is what it is.
He's definitely an interesting guy with an interesting backstory and kind of how he got there, and some really interesting watches.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. After this past weekend, I had a lot of fun with Matt. Actually, him and I had a couple of little inside jokes going on for the weekend, and I learned about his backstory too, which is I'd like to get. We've talked about getting him on the podcast too to share some of that, but we'll leave that for another day.
Oh, I'd love to sit down with a whiskey and that dude. That would be.
Mm-hmm.
He has these whiskey events at his office, I understand, but that would be.
That's Seattle, right? I think.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a guy I'd like to sit down and have a whiskey with. That's for sure.
100%.
Any other questions for us, James?
No, that was really just it. I mean, I hate the fact that Vancouver Marathon Party is better because the Toronto one is so good. I can't really imagine what better is, but tempts me to go to Vancouver next year just for that. But that's for the listeners. The marathon TGN party is out of this world. It is like the best party I've ever been to in any environment. Short of my wedding, sweetheart, if you're listening. It was the best party ever, consistently year over year. So the fact that the one in Vancouver is a little bit better, that's scary.
Got some sweet marathon swag there.
I didn't get one of those.
You didn't?
No.
They had them at the
Right.
front table.
Yeah, but I didn't take it. I saw the boxes. I didn't just grab something.
That was stock for the store.
It's one of those like little clip
Oh.
on.
Oh, for a NATO
Yeah.
strap?
Yeah.
Actually,
Yeah, so that's
paid
good I
money
didn't
for
take
one
it
of
out.
those.
I would never use it.
Yeah.
Strap
Well,
it to
yeah.
what? It's not gonna happen.
Well, you've got your first strap now, Mark. It's a downhill.
Yeah, well, I'm toying with the
downhill
idea of
from
a
there.
mesh bracelet for it, or I don't know how long I'm gonna have this watch, so I don't know. Oh, I'm trying. I'm really trying hard.
All right, so I think you guys have a thing coming up here in Montreal. Maybe it'll end up rivaling the Marathon TG.
Yeah, that's my next thing.
and
James, you want to fill in everybody about our event coming up and maybe a bit about our group?
Yeah, well, we'll start with the group. Our group is the Timepiece Social Club. You can find us at Timepiece Social on Instagram. We're 7 guys that kind of formed this. Aaron, the famous, probably one of the world's greatest strap makers. Bosco, we talked about before. The eminent watch collector, focuses on chronographs from the 30s, 40s, 50s, and is this is a real collector. He will dig up data and information, the most obscure possible, and he writes some amazing articles that he that he writes himself about the history of these watches. I mean, just a real archive historian. That's the word I'm looking for, a historian of these timepieces. I wish I had his level of focus in collecting. I got another guy, Samir. Samir is the nicest guy on the planet. Like if you get to meet him and have a burger with him or a roast beef sandwich, which is what him and I like to have at one of our favorite places, and a beer, he's just so pleasant to be around and talk watches. Mark, of course, you're our key member. You've got all the industry contacts, podcasting and your writing and your years in the business. Our club gets a lot of its clout because of what you bring to it. We got three Jameses. Um, James Delela, he's our EDC guy. He comes to it or comes to watches as a part of that EDC journey of his. And he's a flashlight collector, pocket knife collector, and a watch collector. And I think that's an important part because I think a lot of even casual watch collectors kind of, whether they realize it or not, kind of cross that line to EDC. It's an element of the thinking that produces a watch collector wanting to have something strapped on your wrist all the time. We got James Cornish, who is just a brilliant photographer and focusing on cars and watches and other stuff too. But he is just incredibly talented. And then there's me, and I'm just kind of happy that all these guys let me hang around and be part of their club. But the point is, like, you got this like base of expertise, connections, industry, collector mentalities. You got this like base of really broad base of kind of expertise that I think we're going to use or try and use to kind of change the way a standard club would be run or managed. That's kind of our hope, anyways. And at the end, we're like we just love hanging out together. So it becomes a good base to try and build events like the one that's coming up, our pre Montreal Timepiece Show event, which is kind of inspired by an event that Red Bar, when Red Bar Montreal was launched, they had a similar event before the Toronto Timepiece Show, the inaugural Timepiece Show, here in Montreal, where a lot of the events kind of passing through stopped by, and it was a lot of fun to have this like pre-event to the main show. And uh, although there was some, Red Bar brings a certain heavyweight element to it. We had a lot of fun in a great bar, and we're hoping we can kind of reproduce some of that energy. And we're modeling also a event that you guys threw. Well, I think it was Watches and Whiskey or Whiskey and Watches,
Yeah.
um, which was the model for this, and it's just a really casual event. Some brands there, nothing serious, no kind of real shopping, just some brands so that there's watches to look at, and a nice place with some food, drinks, and company. Like, really, as a matter of fact, it was at that event where I met Bosco. Like, that's the beginning of my
Mm.
friendship with Bosco, came from just literally sitting at the bar ordering a scotch, and he was ordering a scotch, and Dad was there, and he was ordering a scotch, and we were just chatting, just chatting about watches and the fact that we're all there. And it turns out the guy lives 2 minutes from me.
Hmm.
He is literally, I'm 1 minute from that bar, and he's 1 minute on the other side of that bar, and we had no idea.
I
Listen,
remember that actually. I remember.
I'd listened to
Yeah.
him on Fratello. Like, he was interviewed on Fratello as an expert in these I think it was Angelus chronographs. That's what he was on there for. But
Hmm.
he was being interviewed there, and I remember listening to this guy and hearing that he was from Montreal. Like, oh, cool. I should, see if I can make contact with him, and I never did. And then turns out he lives 2 minutes away from me. So it's these events are neat because you get to, you know, the timepiece show brought me Mark, watches and whiskey brought me Bosco. The whole, my best friends right now, all of them are tied to watches.
Yeah, same with
My
me.
entire, and these are like, my, if I look at all the friends I've had in my life, which, many have come and gone, they were inherited. You got them for some reason. They were ones you went to school with, or they were a friend of a friend. And this is the first time in my life I found myself surrounded by just guys that have, that that come from the same personal interest rather than having been, being in a certain place together. So this is like the camaraderie, the brotherhood that has created this club, and we're hoping to bring that back and have new relationships formed and new friends made for ourselves, but also for the people that come. Like that they can speak to people that are infected by the same disease, and just kind of hang out, drink some beers, look at some watches, and have a good time. That's the goal, anyways. We some of the brands that are coming. I mean, obviously Isotope. Mark, you're the head North American head of that brand, so you're going to be there. Tesse, Jose Sermano is going to be there with his unique dialed watches. Bob, you're bringing Micro Mil Spec.
Mhm.
That's a super cool brand. That's high on my list. I want a Micro Mil Spec.
It's a good alternative to the VC, man.
Are you gonna have any that you can leave behind? Who else? Yeah, you got Sunrex.
We got Sunrex Vario, a couple of new brands that I've met actually out in Vancouver, Ramago and this 22 Studio that I'm wearing today.
Right. Yeah.
But again, this isn't like a salesy thing. This is just a casual
Nope.
check it out. You know what I mean? Like I'm not into like doing sales for watches in that way. So I just like I'm the same as you guys. We put on these kind of type of events too, and it's a fun way to like just maybe introduce brands to somebody, make an awareness of some of these newer unique brands, but it's just for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
It's
that's
for
the
the
key,
connection.
right?
Yeah.
It's not about selling. It's not about
Yeah.
buying. Even if I'm going to try and buy your Micro Mil Spec demo, um, like it's literally about having some watches to look at, experts or brand reps there to talk about them, tell you about them. But it's going to be very different from the show. It's going to be a watch hangout where some of the dudes are collectors and some of the dudes are brand reps. That's really it's
But
just
these
a
brand
it's
reps and
just
owners are also collectors, so
yeah
we're all
Yeah.
there to
yeah
just have some fun as well and make contacts and just bask in the glow
exactly.
of our loom dials.
And even Jason Hutton, founder of the Timepiece shows, I hear might join us as well. So that would be cool. Meet the guy behind. I mean, I've met him a few times, but
We're staying at the same hotel, and I need a DD, so I'm gonna force him over there.
Well, this is going to be May 28th,
Yeah.
May 28th.
the Thursday
Yeah,
before the Montreal Timepiece show. Venue is
exactly.
still being nailed down. James and I are going to visit someplace this evening. Once we've got that nailed down, we'll have the RSVP Eventbrite link set up, and then I'll try to include that in the notes for the show. I want to put Bosco's Substack in the notes
Yep.
of our show as well.
Yeah,
And yeah, that'd be
that's where he
important.
publishes articles, and
Yeah.
they're well worth a read. Even if 1930s, 40s chronographs aren't your focus, just the quality of writing and
The detailed
investigation
knowledge.
is just fascinating. Like
Yeah.
it's why we're in this hobby. It's
And
just
nobody's mentioned this, but while we're plugging people, follow at Flying Spring Bar on Instagram.
That'll be
and
That's me.
DM him that we need to see pictures of these clocks.
yeah. Flood his DM for that.
Yes.
And flood his
Please.
DM about the article on his dad's
Please do.
Rolex and Omega, so he can get him off his button and send me some details.
You know where I got that name from?
No.
Do you remember the Two Broke Watch Snobs podcast?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I mean, it's still out there. One of his podcasts I was listening, and he made the comment something about Flying Spring Bar, and that would make a great Instagram handle, and I jumped on it. Like I jumped on it and grabbed it, but I didn't that came from Kaz, the Two Broke Watch Snobs.
Wow.
Yeah. Back to the show. There's going to be limited space. So what we're doing is, anybody who's interested, we're not going to release the details right away. For security purposes, it's going to be a little bit closer to the event. But if anybody's interested, you can DM the at Timepiece social account, and send me your name and your email address, and that will get you an invite from the Eventbrite system. And there will be a limited space. We are not, we're hoping to hit capacity pretty quickly. It's still going to be a pretty big event, but yeah, it's a limited space for security and whatever. We want to just kind of keep it under control. So the first kind of people in there, first come, first serve. Yeah, and that's I think about it. It's going to be a great. The last one, I mean, the last one worked out so well. The Watches and Whiskey worked out so well. You had how many people? Like 80 people
Yeah,
that
just
night?
about 70, 80.
Somewhere around there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was amazing for just kind of, I mean, it wasn't out of the blue, but you know what I mean? It wasn't this big established kind
No.
of
Yeah.
thing that everybody had been planning for a while, like the timepiece shows. It just, just kind of coalesced and came into existence. It was great. So hopefully we can achieve the same thing. We certainly have uh, uh, a few more brands, I think, than that time behind it. I think we'll have a better space. And I think we'll have a lot of really cool people. Montreal's certainly starving for this kind of event after the Montreal Red Bar kind of became quiet. Um, I think there's a lot of room for this, and I know some of the Montreal Facebook groups are going to get involved, and
Yep.
or not get involved, but are all invited and are interested. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yep. For sure.
I'm pumped, man. That whole weekend, Thursday straight through till Sunday, is going to be a blast.
Absolutely.
Yep.
So,
What's happening Sunday?
we don't know yet.
Just the
Well,
show. I don't know what's happening afterwards, but
Sunday's the only day I can't go.
That's when the marathon party happens. No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
probably, yeah. Exactly. Just my luck.
All right. Well, that's our show for today. Thanks again, James, for filling in for Brent and being such an awesome guest. If people want to follow you, your collecting exploits and your clockmaking extravaganza, it's at Flying Spring Bar on Instagram. That's still the best place to find you.
Yep, that's the only place. Yep.
Perfect. The Time to Calibrate podcast is out every 2 weeks and can be found wherever you download your podcasts. If you would like to contact us, you can email us at timetocalibrate@gmail.com or DM us on Instagram at Time to Calibrate. If you enjoy the show, please like, subscribe, review, and do all that happy stuff. Heck, if you like it, tell a friend. We greatly appreciate it. Thank you for listening. We hope to see you all at the Montreal Timepiece Show. Remember, get your tickets at timepieceshow.com. Until then, see you in 2 weeks. T2C out.